Bryan Barberena aptly steps in and says, I'll save the day. Don't you worry, right? So just let's talk about this before we move into this fight, man. Harder matchup, Bryan Barberena or Daniel Rodriguez?
Barberena, actually, man. I feel like even though the youth of Daniel Rodriguez, the power, the speed, the boxing, he has a lot of these intangibles that makes him a very challenging opponent. I feel like Barberena has a couple extra things in the tool belt he can lean on. You know, the age, the experience, the chin. Barberena has power too. He might be not as slick on the feet as D-Rod, but homeboy can bang, and Bam Bam is here to bang all the time. So I there's you call him the legend killer, but I feel like at this point, Barberena is really stepping into his own, and I think he's getting a lot of respect from the UFC brass by stepping into positions like this, and they're putting him on the main cards of pay-per-views. And yeah, it is a short notice, but Barberena has been going from prelim to up the card. So this is a good trajectory for both people, and I'm glad to see Gunnar Nelson here too, man. Let's not let him fade off into this one, because he also accepted a short notice fight against a killer like Bryan Barberena. All credit to Gunnar Nelson, and he only fought 2 months ago, even less. Let's see. What do you know?
No, it was a year ago. Yeah, he fought a year ago, man, against Takashi Sato.
Oh man, I thought he had another fight that he was supposed to have.
He did have one that was supposed to be against Daniel Rodriguez. It was for this bout, but no, that was it. But this is what it comes down to, man. Listen, I love me some Bam Bam Barberena. This dude has been in there for the hard fights, the Matt Browns, the Robbie Lawlers, right? He even got a win against Darian Weeks. But he got choked out against RDA, right, in his last fight. And when you're fighting a guy whose specialty is choking people the fuck out, you're talking about Gunnar Nelson. So I think there's two ways that you can approach this fight. One is Gunnar Nelson, he spams the takedowns. Bryan Barberena puts on an admirable fight. He either gets finished or he loses a decision via just getting taken down time and time again. Look at the prop for submission here, minus 130. I mean, Gunnar Nelson, he's not a fucking chump. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is what the man do. This is what he does. Out of his total victories in the UFC, he's 9-5 in the UFC, 13 win, or actually, how many wins by submission? Mm-hmm. I can't tell you. He has a lot. He has 13 total. I can't tell you how many are in the UFC specifically, but this dude submits people. This is what he does. Bryan Barberena, man, if he can keep the fight on the feet, that's where this becomes a trap game. That's where this fight gets interesting. That's where I say Bam Bam Bryan Barberena has a legitimate shot to get a victory here. Because if you look at the props, plus 900 for a decision, plus 400 for TKO, plus 2,200 for the submission. That goes to show you that they do think Gunnar Nelson's going to take him down time and time and time again. I think that's going to be the case too. How do you think Bryan Barberena avoids getting taken down, man? Do you think that he just has to start fast, start hot, and just get Gunnar Nelson out there, or do you have a different game plan?
Start fast, start hot, and throw those uppercuts, man. You got to throw stuff down the pipe, straight jabs, keep him at bay. Once he starts looking at your legs, start throwing the uppercuts. Let him know that if he's coming in towards your hips, he's going to have to eat one. And let him start thinking about that. That way, because you're right, Derek, it's 13 submissions in all of Gunnar Nelson's career, but the big thing, he's never been finished by submission either. So as much as rolling around he is there with other killers, he's always the one coming out on top. So you got to watch out for this dude, getting to your hips, bringing you down, and submitting you. Doing that, like I said, man, Bryan Barberena has power. He has good foot movement. It may not be the sharpest of there, but he can see things coming. If he knows what you're talented at, you're able to avoid it a little bit easier. I'm hoping Barberena leans a little bit more on his veteran experience, but again, going against Gunny, another veteran right here.
Yeah, man. And excuse me. If you look at Gunnar Nelson against Takashi Sato in his last fight, took him down 3 times. If you look at Bryan Barberena in his fight against RDA, who RDA came out being like, I'm going to go back to business, this is what I do. Took him down 4 times and choked him out. How much can change, right, since that last fight, which happened in December? You got 3 months to just completely revamp and revitalize your takedown defense. It's going to be tough. But if he can stuff the takedowns and tire out Gunnar Nelson, he can win this fight by beating him up on the feet. It's just a matter of that big, monstrous if. Because Gunnar Nelson is a minus 400 favorite, and I think rightfully so, man. I think he was out of the spotlight for so long, people slept on him. They look at him and they think, who's this old guy against Bryan Barberena? Nah, I'm going to be honest with you. Give me Gunnar Nelson. But you know what, man? I'm actually going to take the unconventional approach. I feel like I'm almost missing out on stealing candy from a baby, but I'm going to take the decision by Gunnar Nelson. I think Bryan Barberena is going to be very, very game, and I think it's going to be one of those washing machines, takedown, up, takedown, control him for an entire round, but not quite submit him, and then just ride out the fight for decision. What do you think?
I like it. I like it. I do think it's going to be a lot harder of a fight than a lot of people are thinking for both sides, whether you're on Barberena or whether you're on Gunny. I think it's going to be a very challenging fight. Me personally, though, I'm going with the underdog. I'm going Bam Bam Barberena. I'm actually taking the TKO. TKO is very heavy on this first round, man. I'm actually going round one. I think it's going to end early.
My man is feeling Bam Bam Bryan Barberena. All right, brother. Well, hey, listen, this is going to be an interesting one. You got to love it, though. You got to love to see Gunnar Nelson back in action. And then Bryan Barberena, definition of game. I don't want to hear what anybody says. He's the definition of game.